First and foremost, welcome. We are very proud. You as a Sri Lankan has achieved this very high accolade within the United Nations Children's Fund. Congratulations. We as an opposition party, we focus very heavily on the health of mothers and children. So maternal and child health, MCH, is uppermost in our list of priorities in promoting a health agenda for all Sri Lankans. We also have several programs funded by well-wishers and donors aimed at uplifting health standards and educational standards of the people of our country, especially the children. In fact, after this meeting, I'm off to Attanagalla. We have a program called Sakvala Universe, where we provide computer equipment, smart boards, printers to schools for the establishment of a smart classroom. On the other hand, we have also pioneered various efforts in providing essential medicines and drugs, and also vital life-saving equipment to the state hospital sector of the country. So we are not the normal opposition that has existed in Sri Lanka for 75 years, because you know very well that programs are implemented only while you are in government. When you are in opposition, you are not empowered through state funds to do good for the people. But we have devised our own programs to ensure that we uplift the education and health sectors, which we believe to be a basic human need. We also have a much more holistic approach, integrated approach, and a wide-ranging interpretation of human rights. It's not just civic and political rights. We believe in economic rights, social rights, cultural, religious, health, education. It's an all-encompassing approach to rights. As you know very well, Sri Lanka has a disorganized, unplanned, ad hoc system of early childhood care and education. For example, you can start a preschool tomorrow without much hindrance. That's how irregular it is. So we believe that free education as a basic human need and as one of the basic tenets of the welfare state, free education should commence from 3 to 5 years, early childhood education. We need to regularize, establish standards, and improve the quality of early childhood education, otherwise known as preschool education. As you know, it's the time period up to 5 years, which results in 70% of growth of the brain growth and cognitive development, according to pediatricians. But when this 70% of cognitive development and brain growth is taking place, Sri Lanka is having a very disorganized, substandard, ad hoc system of preschool education. So that's another area that we are focusing on.
I can see, Sajith, you're so familiar with the issues, and certainly I couldn't put it better on the women's nutrition, because we have always been struggling with actual, as you said, the BM, body mass index of women, low birth weight, and then growth faltering. So it's interesting for me looking at it from a global perspective that, you know, whereas in many countries in sub-Saharan Africa there's high mortality, we have similar, actually comparable levels of undernutrition. But of course, our health system is strong enough that it doesn't manifest itself in mortality, but it's still making children not achieve their full potential. And of course, you know, also mothers. I mean, you know, that's a right in itself for women to have adequate nutrition, and certainly that's a big and important agenda for us across South Asia. But of course, in Sri Lanka, because it has relatively high level of preventive healthcare, like you were saying, we shouldn't be seeing these problems. So in a way, it's important to make sure we double down on it. And then I couldn't agree, and I couldn't put it better on the early childhood education element. Certainly, our children had access to some form of structured early childhood education across the board. Then I think achievements on foundational learning would be much higher. But I'm not, because you are very, very conversant with the issues. So what I wanted to maybe ask just is your thinking on, you know, these children's issues are so important for the country. I mean, do you see any kind of possibilities of there being, you know, some part of a manifesto that cuts across all the political kind of spectrum on these children's issues, child rights issues, and whether that's a possibility, because I don't think whatever our differences that on those issues, given Sri Lanka's history and proud achievements in these areas, that there should be any differences between us. But I don't know whether your thoughts on that.
The Parliament has been one of the fora where the attempt to arrive at a consensus on child rights and women's rights. So I think by and large there is a consensus. But to what extent the political parties in the democratic process prioritizes the women's issues and children's issues are another matter. All I can tell you is that we are going to sign up to our own social contract with the women of the country through a women's charter, and the children of the country, the child's charter, and ensure that the specific policy prescriptions that are enshrined in that charter are implemented according to a timetable. So I think there is a lot of interest and general agreement on what needs to be done. But to what extent other political parties have the requisite understanding, much needed comprehension and literacy on the subject matter, that's something to be looked at. But we as the main opposition party and alliance, we will make sure that women's rights and children's rights will become a fulcrum, a focal point in our policy agenda. And I mentioned before, we hope to establish social contracts with the stakeholders so that we are able to implement those policy programs according to a specific timetable.
Thank you for championing those issues. I think those would benefit everyone. So certainly, you're very conversant with the issues. So I think we really appreciate you championing them. And as I mentioned,
we have in our own discussions with IMF and other international financial institutions, we have expressed our own sentiments in no uncertain terms that what ought to practice is restructuring reforms with a human face. We have to prioritize humanism over and above everything else. Unfortunately, I doubt whether the present administration has the requisite talent nor the acumen to negotiate with the IMF on a strong agenda where both reforms, restructuring of the Sri Lankan economy is done in parallel to focusing on humanitarian issues and people-related issues. For example, as you quite rightly said, there's absolutely no mention about repercussions of IMF reforms on the mothers and the children. To be fair, I think the IMF has given basic benchmarks, whereas the Sri Lankan government is the one who should devise programs in a manner which takes into account of the child's and the woman's economic, social, educational, health and other rights, food security. So we have to make sure that the IMF program is devised in a very humanitarian manner with the high escalations in electricity prices and the impact that's having on disposable income and the parallel impact on monies that are available to fund the basic human needs. So you see the vicious cycle in operation. Whereas we have been very vocal and open of the fact that we need IMF's help and assistance, but we will certainly go for a renegotiation which would ensure that the humanitarian aspects, the human issues, are also given greater consideration and value when it comes to the negotiation process. So I totally agree with you.